Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today I'll be showing you the most important stats to pay attention to when modding weapons in Grey Zone Warfare, of which arguably the most important is not visible in the stat screen, and we'll be going through these in the context of level 1 and 2 traders. So we're here looking at Gunny level 1. I actually have level 2 here, but the guns that you can buy from him include this one and this one. I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but this one is basically the standard M4. It's got nothing special really on it, and you can add a few things to this, but not really that much at level 1. Level 2 Gunny is really where this stuff opens out, but for the time being, we'll have a look at the attachments that are compatible that you can use to make this gun slightly better. First and foremost, the gas block doesn't give you any stats at all, and there is a slightly better one, which is the low profile version, which is this guy here, the Mark 12 low profile gas block. This does give you a 5% recoil reduction, which is quite nice, and this is really important, and we'll touch on this a little bit later. So what you do here is you just pull off the gas block on my one that I've got there, and you pop on this one here instead. Then next what we're going to do is upgrade to the nylon stock. So here we've just got the basic M4 stock. Down here, instead, you've got the nylon stock. To buy stuff, you just stick it in here and then press trade. We're going to take off the M4 stock. I've already got most of these parts in my stash. We're going to stick that on instead. And the nylon stock has got plus 2% on recoil control, weapon handling, and 0 on arm stamina drain. We just take a quick second to have a look at these statistics. The way that you want to think about these stats generally is recoil control. You want this to be positive number because more recoil control is good. Arm stamina drain, you want this to be a negative number because you want the drain to be less so that you have more arm stamina. Weapons handling, you want this to be a positive number, and reload time, you also want this to be a negative number. So there's kind of a plus minus thing going on here in terms of what you actually want to see. There's quite a lot of attachments that make weapon handling go down, so it's quite difficult to keep this nice and high unless you pick very specific attachments for it. But as we'll see a little bit later, in my opinion, at the moment, it's not one of the most important stats that you can have. So the difference between the basic stock and this one, the nylon stock, you do get better recoil control and you also get better weapon handling, and you don't get any disadvantage on arm stamina drain. So the nylon stock is basically a no-brainer to put on here. Next up, we're going to look at the pistol grip, the standard one, the A2 that comes with the gun. Again, it doesn't do anything to the actual weapon. You can go and buy the MOE grip, which is either this one or that one. One's in grey and one is in black. And this one does have some extra stats on it. It's got better recoil control, it's got better weapon handling, but it does actually increase the amount of drain that you have on arm stamina. So the basic pistol grip is slightly better in terms of that, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to stick on the MOE grip here. And then after that, the only other thing we can really do is with the handguard. We've got this handguard here that isn't compatible with any foregrips because it's the basic one that comes with the gun, the default that we all know and love. The only one that you can buy at the beginning, this is all mixed up together with Gunny 1 and 2, and I wish there was a way to split it, but there isn't at the moment. You can only buy the M-Lock carbine handguard at the moment from Gunny level 1. So we're going to buy that and put it on, and this gives you the ability to attach foregrips. One thing that I'll point out, this isn't important for this one. When you're at level 1, the only thing that you can buy is the Pro M-Lock hand stop. This is actually M-Lock already, as it says in the name. So you can just put this straight on the weapon and it'll go right onto the handguard like that. But there are some rails, there are some other different types of foregrips you can see from Gunny level 2. There's like the shift grip and the RVG and a few like that. And those ones, you need to be using one of these M-Lock rails. I think they would fit with the 5. They definitely fit with the 7. And this one's you've got 3, 5, 7, 9. The 3 is exclusively for things like flashlights and lasers, that kind of stuff. And so they won't necessarily fit onto this in particular. So you need to buy one of these larger rails. I normally just buy the 7. So if we go and compare the difference between this gun that we've built and the weapon that you can buy just as standard from Gunny to begin with, you end up here with 2% recoil control going up to 8%. We've got arm stamina drain, which is slightly higher. Weapon handling is quite a bit better at 13%, and the reload time is marginally better as well. This reload time actually comes from something I didn't mention, which is the change in magazine. You've got this one here, the Stanag mag, the regular one, which is minus 4% reload time, and then this one, the P mag, which has got minus 6 instead. So that's where that comes from. You should be able to buy this. If you can't buy this at Gunny level 1, it doesn't really matter too much. A 2% decrease in reload time really is neither here nor there. Now, the only thing that I would say about the difference between these two particular weapons, yeah, it doesn't really cost that much to mod it like this, but it also doesn't really make that much difference. I went and compared quite a few of these different stats, and as you can see, having recoil control of 2 or 8 doesn't make that much difference between the two. They broadly look the same. Yes, it's very slightly better. And the same thing with weapon handling as well. I tried to compare two different guns separately with exactly the same recoil and looked at the weapon handling, and I couldn't really tell the difference between the two of the guns. So it's a bit confusing to me at the moment as to what those things are actually doing. And so I'm not sure whether it's even worth modding at this point. Going from the basic one and spending some money to get it up to the better one, I just don't know really whether there's any point. There is another version that you can get. Some of this stuff comes on already. You've got the MOE handguard and you've also got the nylon stock. One thing to note about this is that the flash hider that you get on this is only 5% recoil reduction, whereas on the basic M4, the default one, this actually comes with plus 10. So you want to go and buy one of these A2 flash hiders if you do decide to buy the modded version straight up, just because it saves you a little bit of time. And the A2 flash hider can be found down here for 10% recoil reduction instead. So you may as well go and do that. Now, it's interesting here that we're talking about recoil reduction, because recoil reduction is not a stat that you see listed at all on the gun. And it does make a huge difference. In my opinion, it's probably the most impactful stat by a very, very long way. We can go and compare two different builds with exactly the same recoil control, but one with dramatically different recoil reduction to another. And what's interesting about recoil reduction in general is that if you go and look at a decent weapon, so let's go and look at the gun that I'm actually using at the moment, recoil reduction itself, you only find them on gas blocks like this one that I've got attached, the JP gas block, or on the SF3P, which is the muzzle brake that goes underneath some other suppressor, and then a suppressor over the top. You can see these three parts all have recoil reduction 7, recoil reduction 15, and recoil reduction 2. This isn't actually represented on the gun anywhere. So if I take off the SF3P, which is the brake, that will take the suppressor off with it, nothing changes. This is very, very interesting. But if you don't have it, it makes an enormous difference to the overall recoil of the weapon. And this statistic is actually the main reason why the good weapons feel good. I will show you a video again about the difference between the two. You can have exactly the same gun. One will have recoil reduction on it and the other one won't. This statistic is probably the most important and most impactful stat out of all of them and isn't listed on the gun itself, which I find a little bit strange. The only other thing to note about the gas blocks here is that there is actually a fire rate component to this. I did test this, it does actually work, it does increase the fire rate of your weapon. This takes you from 800 basically to about 850 using this gas block. So it's interesting to note that you can actually get better time to kill by adding some of these like fire rate components. I don't know how many more are going to come in the game, but at the moment we've at least got this one on the gas block, which is kind of cool. Let's take a break away from M4s for a second, just before we go and finish that off later, because those are at level 2 traders. And instead, let's go and look at the AK. So if we go over to Artisan, you don't unlock Artisan immediately, but after doing a couple of quests, I think it's about 7 or 8, then you unlock Artisan via Labrad. And as the local, she sells AKMs and Mosins and those kind of Eastern weapons. The first thing that you need to note about these is that because there is no top rail like there is in Tarkov at the moment in the game, something like the AKM, you can't get any sights on it. At least you can't from early level traders as far as I've seen so far. So in order to be able to actually modify these weapons to add sights to your AKs, if you want to use one properly in the field, you have to have either the AKMN or the AKMSN. Now you can do this in two different ways. You can either buy an AKM, buy an AKMN base and then swap the parts over onto it, or you can just kind of build it from scratch. So if we buy an AKMN, we'll then also need to go and buy a gas block, so an AKM gas block will do. We'll then need a handguard. I think we're going to buy this one because this has got Picatinny rail on the top and the bottom. This will allow us to add a vertical foregrip, and Artisan is the first person that we're allowed to buy other foregrips than the Lv.1 that we find on Gunny, the RK0, the RK4, the RK5, and the RK6. They're kind of like in pairs. So the RK5 and the RK0 are basically the same, and the RK6 and the RK4 are also basically the same. So just pick the one that's lightest. I was using the RK5 because of the recoil control on this one. But needless to say, we'll go and buy one of those. So we'll go and get the RK5 and one of these handguards, as I said, so we can actually attach it on. Next, we can go and buy an MOE AK grip. This gives you a few better stats than the basic one. And then the next thing that we really are probably going to want to add is a stock. So on this one, we can get the MOE AK stock, which again has some better stats than the standard version. I'm not even sure if you can buy the wooden one that comes with the AKM. The only alternative here is the AKMSN foldable stock, and this one presumably only fits on this because as you can see the little drilled hole there, that's not present on the AKMN. So if you buy the AKMN, you probably have to go for the MOE AK stock as well. And then from here, we want to add some sights to this weapon. So we're going to have to use this, the BP02 side mount. Now the N in the name here, this represents the fact that it has a dovetail mount. You can just about see it here. You can't zoom in on Grey Zone. There's a little slot there that allows you to attach a mount, and the BP02 is one of them. We'll attach the BP02 into here and we'll buy something in a moment. So the way to organize this is we're going to add the gas block first. We can add the stock next. We can then put on the handguard. We'll put on the vertical foregrip, a pistol grip, and then the sight mount onto that. So now all we need to do is get a magazine, and the gun will technically be functional, and then we need to add something on the top. So really the choice is yours. You can either add one of the sights that we've used previously, like the holographics that we've had before from Gunny, something like this, the EXPS2. I prefer the one not with the one dot, but one with the circle. You can also, at level 1, you can get the ACOG. The ACOG comes from Gunny as well, and this one is down here. It's quite expensive, 1.94k. In order to attach it to the AK, differently to the M4, because the ACOG will actually slide along the carry handle, so you don't necessarily need to buy a mount. But on the AK, because we've just got a regular Picatinny rail on top of the weapon here, we need to buy a mount first. We've got an ACOG mount there that we can stick right onto that, and I've already got an ACOG somewhere else that we can use. Take it away from the old M4 and stick it onto the AK. So this way you can get a 4x scope from level 1 traders. It is artisan, so you don't get her straight away, but this then allows you to use ammo from in raid. And also one extra thing, the final piece that tops this off, is we can buy the PBS-01 suppressor. This is the first suppressor that we're able to get access to for assault rifles, earlier than the M4s and the Western equivalents. We can stick this on, and then we can shoot this gun and have a good time, which is very, very nice. Now, if sniping is your preferred style, Artisan also helps us build a sniper as well. There is a Mosin, which is already available here, the Mosin Nagant Sniper, but this is a short version, and this doesn't have a mount on the side to attach a sight, which is very unfortunate. And this is because the stock that is on it is the carbine version of the stock, and not the sniper version. Also, if we want to use the sniper rifle in the best capacity, we probably want a little bit better accuracy. This M4, this stock M4 that we've got, is 2.15 MOA. If you don't know what MOA is, it means minute of angle, and you can go away and look up that. But it's basically a representation of how tight the spread is. On the Mosin, we've got 3 here, which is not that good really. It's okay for close range, but as you get further away, you might just miss due to the inaccuracy of the gun. However, what Artisan does have is she has a long barrel, a 730 barrel here, and this one has an MOA of 1.5, which is a lot better. So the way that we could do this is either just buy the Mosin and then swap the stuff over, or again, you can buy the Mosin lower, which is my preferred way. You can then buy a 730mm barrel. We could buy the big Mosin stock. This is the sniper version of the stock, rather than, you can't get the carbon one here, but you can get this weird folding one, but we're not going to do that. We're going to grab this one. And then, because we now have a dovetail mount, we need to be able to attach it in some way. This is the mount that lets you get started. This is the Kuchtov mount. You can put that through into here. And then you need the PU rings. This attaches to the Kuchtov mount, which goes onto the gun. And on top of those, you then need a little sight. And the sight that will fit into this is the PU 3.5. This is the Mosin sight. It is the only one that fits in. It's not very modular. It's a very old weapon. We buy all these pieces and spin the Mosin around, put the stock on, put the barrel in. If you move it so it's the right size, we put the mount on, we then put the ring mount on, and then we put the optic on the inside. Now the only thing that we need to do left is to buy a magazine. Buy the internal 5-round magazine, because that's what the Mosin supports, and there you have it. You have a sniper rifle with 1.5 MOA, which is pretty good, and you've got that at level 1 traders as well. So this kind of fits all of your needs. You can build a level 1 M4, a level 1 AKMN, and a level 1 Mosin, mostly using Artisan and a few parts from Gunny. Now, the final part that I want to talk about is, again, back on Gunny and building a really good M4. So there is a decent M4 that's here for $3,820 US. This has got the nice gas block, and there's a few other things that are good about it, like the 3-prong. If you want to go unsuppressed, the 3-prong is the way. We were talking before about the Colt A1, which is fairly decent, but the problem with that is that it is only 10% recoil reduction. Once you get to Gunny level 2, you can then upgrade this to the 3-prong, which is 20% recoil reduction instead, which is very, very strong. The alternative to this in terms of muzzles is the single suppressor that you get access to for 5.56 weapons, which is the RC1. And this is the one we were looking at previously. The RC1 goes on top of the SOCOM 3-prong flash hider, which is the SF3P. And when you put these two things together, you don't quite get to the 3-prong. It's not the 20%, but you've got 15% from here and 2% from there, so 17%, which should be good enough, especially given that you're now suppressed. So this is really the way to go when you want to be building an M4 out and making it really, really good. We're going to start by taking our M4 here, and we're going to pimp this guy out. When we look at the new handguards that we've got available, we've got the RAS2 12-inch and the 9.5-inch. These ones have got recoil control statistics on them as well, but the RAS2 is the best. So we're going to stick this guy on. I'm going to take away the old M-lock and put this one on instead. Now, depending on exactly what you're looking for, you can go for weapon handling here, and this one doesn't give you any recoil control or any arm stamina drain, but unfortunately this one doesn't fit on this particular handguard, so we have to pick something else. I do think that the shift is quite good. There's a few different options here. We've got like the RVG, the UTG, and we've got the UTG Slim as well. And between these lot, some of them give you recoil control, some of them give you weapon handling. It's kind of a bit of a balance for each. You know, you get better arm stamina with a shift grip, but you also get some recoil control as well, but weapon handling is slightly worse. Or you've got good weapon handling with a little bit less recoil control, but the arm stamina drain is better as well. So I've been settling for the shift. Bizarrely, as I said, when I've been testing these things, it hasn't really seemed to matter all that much. So I think you can kind of just pick any of these if you want to and just stick them on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the SF3P from a different weapon, and this one over here. I'll take off the A2, and then I'm going to use the SF3P from this particular gun just to save me from buying it. And then in terms of stocks, there's a new stock that appears, which is the Daniel's Defense butt stock. I'm going to take off the nylon stock. We'll just compare the two together. We've got 6% recoil control versus 2, arm stamina drain is 0, and weapon handling is 4 rather than 2 as well. So this is a straight upgrade. I'm going to remove the nylon stock, and we'll add the Daniel's Defense stock on instead from this other gun. Saves me from just buying another one and filling up my stash, because I'm only using the basic stash because I want the new player experience before I upgrade to the higher versions, because it feels slightly more authentic that way to me. Then we've got a very good pistol grip, this Torque pistol grip. This is better even than the MOE. You can see it again, it's a straight upgrade except for a tiny little bit of arm stamina. So we're going to be buying another one of those and using that instead of the MOE, which is pretty nice. Now we could take off the carry handle and we can go for an LCAN, which you are also able to buy at Gunny level 2. The LCAN is a significant improvement over the top of the ACOG because you now have a 1x and a 4x, and also the picture is wider and it's generally just nicer to use. Now finally, I don't know exactly how much difference this makes, but you can technically buy a 16-inch barrel for the M4. I have done this on some of my weapons. This increases the muzzle velocity. Doesn't seem to do anything else specifically in game. There aren't any stats on it other than muzzle velocity. But I have a feeling that Madfinger have got some of these ballistics changing with the muzzle velocity that you have on the different weapons. And so maybe it's worthwhile swapping over to the longer versions of the gun. This does decrease the weapon handling, but as I said, you will get faster bullet velocity. This one has plus 8% muzzle velocity over the 14.5 inch, which has got 0, and you also get better accuracy too, 1.83 versus 2.5 for the other one. So this seems like a good thing to do if you want to make sure that your gun is absolutely performing as best as possible. So the difference between these guns at level 2 Gunny and the guns at level 1 are night and day. And again, this all comes back to this particular parameter, this recoil reduction parameter. Right now we have 5 plus 15 plus another 2. We've got 22% recoil reduction, which is actually a lot. And if you go and compare the same build without recoil reduction and the same build with recoil reduction, it is dramatically different. One final thing that you might want to upgrade is potentially the charging handle. There's two that give you 4%, the Grip and Rip AR-15, or this one, the Guys Lee charging handle. These are both 4%. You can get this if you want. It depends on whether you think it's worth it. You're going to swap them over, and then you just get a little bit of better reload time than you did previously. But this is pretty much all you need. Like this gun, it feels like night and day from going from the level 1 guns, and I'm a huge fan. I've been enjoying it a lot playing it since I got to level 2 Gunny, so it's definitely worth pushing through those quests and getting to level 2 because it really opens the game up. And in my opinion, the LCAN is kind of required to play the game in a fun way. Using the ACOG only, being stuck on 4x mode, when you get suddenly surprised by an AI close up, it really sucks. But with the LCAN, you feel like you can fight either close range or long range pretty easily. Also, once you get to Gunny level 2, you can buy M855, which is armor piercing, and except in the starter town where HPBT is quite good, this is a hollow point bullet, so it does a lot of damage to people without any armor. This won't penetrate through armor at all, and pretty much all the AI outside the starter town will be wearing armor of some kind. So 855 feels like it just goes through a lot more consistently than any of the other bullets. If you don't have this and you do have to go outside of the starter town, then maybe choose either FMJ or M193, because these ones are kind of armor piercing, but not really. They'll at least tide you over until you can buy M855 from Gunny level 2. So there you have it, the 3 best builds for weapons at level 1 and a really good M4 build for level 2 traders that hopefully will carry you through the early game on Grey Zone Warfare. I've been having a lot of fun with the level 2 build, but as always, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as usual, have fun in Le Mans.